Hi everybody, it's Russ and my Hammers 11. I hope you're all safe and well. YouTube channel, please hit that button, that subscribe button and that notification button so you're made aware of any time we put new content on. Lots of great guests, lots of great ex-players, including today. You recognise him. He played, I think, over 54 times appearances for the club, 6 goals across a 6-year period. Not 6 months, that'd be impressive. 6-season period. He's obviously now Deputy Chief Executive of the PFA, and a couple of weeks ago was elected onto the UEFA Board of Disciplinary Ethics and Control. It's Bobby Barnes. Hi, Bobby. How you doing, man?
Good morning, Russ. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, how are you? I imagine you're living your life on Zoom at the moment.
Yeah, very much. I think it's very fast at the moment because a lot of the committees and things that I'm involved with involve overseas travel, and at the moment that's all on ice. So I'm spending 5 or 6 hours a day on Zoom at the moment. So I think without Zoom, Teams, and all the other platforms, I think I'd be lost. But fortunately, in this age of technology, we can all still stay in touch.
Yeah, it's crazy because you imagine if this was like 20 years ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think it would have been just about mobile phones, wouldn't it? So,
yeah.
Probably great big mobile phones. So, yeah, this has been. I mean, it's been a godsend. I mean, in so many different ways. I mean, in terms of different organisations. Certainly in terms of my staff and my London office, pretty much everybody now is working away from the offices. I don't think we've actually had the offices open for about 3 months now. So fortunately we were prepared, and we had everybody had the right hardware, had the right software. So been able to run things in exactly the same way.
Yeah, no, exactly. I could imagine 20 years ago, no one would have Netflix, never heard of Netflix. We'd have Snake, wouldn't we, in our 3310s? Be very good at Tetris by the end of it, that's for sure. But anyway, thanks for doing this, Bobby. Obviously, the whole idea is we interview players and fans mainly, but players nicely to interview about their time at West Ham, their memories. So hopefully it's probably the nicest Zoom call you probably have, because it's not about...
Well, hopefully, Russ, I'll fit into both of those categories
Exactly.
because, obviously I was fortunate enough to play for the club, but I've always, obviously a lifelong supporter as well. And for me, obviously, one of the great highlights of my career was the fact of being able to represent the club that I supported since I was a young boy.
Yeah, exactly. So why was West Ham your club, Bobby? Why was it your club? Why did you support them?
Well, I was brought up in the East End of London. I was brought up in Leytonstone, and even as a youngster, obviously West Ham was the local team. You had West Ham and you had Leyton Orient. And back in those days, when you were able to get to a ground, you'd go on alternate weeks. So you'd go to West Ham one week and you go to Leyton Orient the other week. And it's quite funny actually, because Leyton Orient was a lot easier to sneak into than Upton Park back in the day. And I was talking to Barry Hearn a little while ago, and we were talking about me sneaking in the ground, and Barry, being Barry, said, well, that's how he was trying to calculate how much gate money I owed him. So, but yeah, I think I'm very much a believer that even as a youngster, you support your local team, don't you? I mean, it's always been quite slightly frustrating when you see local kids walking around in Manchester United shirts or Liverpool shirts, but I think I'm pleased to say that in this part of London, I think pretty much everybody I meet around this part of London, and indeed in Essex, is pretty much a Hammers fan. We get the odd mistaken identity people with the Spurs lot, but in the main, it's West Ham very much.
Exactly, and we've been social distancing for years, Bobby. We just do the COYI wines. That's it, and then that's it. There's no handshake. There's no hug. COYI wines, that's it. If you've been doing it, we're ahead of the curve in terms of that, Bobby.
Well, it's always been difficult actually, because for many years I lived in the same road as Harry Kane and Danny Rose. So obviously, as an ardent West Ham fan, you have to be polite, of course, but it's never easy, particularly on derby days.
No, exactly, and obviously with the PFA position, even more so, being sort of as neutral as you possibly can.
Well, to be honest, it's one thing I've never been. I think I've always been quite overt in the fact that I'm a West Ham fan. Yeah. I'm not neutral. I'm neutral in pretty much every other game, but when they play against West Ham, I'm not neutral.
No, fair enough. I don't think you could be, Bobby. If it's ingrained in such an early age, I just don't think you can be, to be honest. I couldn't be. It's like when you have to go to, when I sit in the press boxes or whatever for away games, it's really hard. It's really hard. I'm not used to it. But yeah, I'm sorry.
It's funny actually, Russ, because when I go to Chelsea, I often go to Chelsea, and when I watch Bruce Buck is always warning me to be on best behaviour, as it were. And it was quite difficult actually, particularly because I think the last time when we went up there and we actually won, Surprisingly, we actually won, and I'm sitting there sort of like this, sort of trying to be polite to my guests, to my hosts, but at the same time, you definitely just wanted to cheer as loud as you can.
Yeah, I know it's a tough one, especially for you. I can imagine. So how did these sort of, obviously you've been with a West Ham fan for obviously from birth, basically. You're in the area, which is lovely. How did the transition start? In terms of playing for the club. Obviously,
Well, like a lot of youngsters, I started with West Ham probably about 11, 12 years of age. Tuesday and Thursday nights up at Upton Park, being taught by a great Ronnie Boyce. At the time, John Lyle, Ron Greenwood, hitting balls up against the wall, getting sideways on, and really that continued. Until you get to 14 when you've got to make a decision, really. And obviously, as a youngster, I've trained with other clubs as well. I've trained with clubs like Crystal Palace, to name but one, and a few others. But there came a time when it got to the age of 14 when you have to sign schoolboy forms, and I remember the great Eddie Bailey came along to see my mum and dad and said, "Right, you've now got to make a decision, and do you want to play for West Ham or not?" And I said, "Very much, yes, of course I do want to play for West Ham." So I signed schoolboy forms at the same time as Paul Allen, actually.
Oh, wow.
Paul Allen and myself signed at the same time. And it's ironic, actually, because we're now talking 43 years on, and Paul Allen and myself still share an office together. Sort of Paul's office is just down the road from mine at the PFA now. And we actually laugh about it that we've actually worked together now sort of pretty much most of our working lives. And we had Jeff Pike with us for a while as well at the PFA. So but yeah, going back to I started playing at 14, and when I signed schoolboy forms, and then you graduate through the South East Counties teams. We had a very successful youth team at that particular time. People like Tony Cottee, Alan Dickens, who went on to obviously have great careers, at the Hammers, as well as of course with Paul. Fortunate enough in that team to win the FA Youth Cup.
81, yeah.
And for myself, obviously I was fortunate enough to make my league debut in 1980 before we actually won the FA Youth Cup, and it's not quite as grand an achievement as Paul's, obviously, because obviously Paul went and won the FA Cup before he won the FA Youth Cup. But I think that the whole point of it was that West Ham as a club was one that you knew that if you were good enough, you'd get an opportunity. If you, regardless of age. And if you look at the age groups that people like myself, Tony, Alan, we were all sort of playing. We all made first team debuts, 16s, 17s, 18s, not like these days when it tends to be a little bit later for people to get an opportunity. I think it was very much a case with West Ham with the famous academy. It was very much the structure that you look to build for players to come through that system, and certainly people like Tony Carr, Mick McGivern, Ronnie Boyce did a fantastic job in the conveyor belt of players that they've brought through over the years. And if you look at the generations of West Ham players that have come through, people like the the Jeff Pikes, the Alan Kirbishleys, Trevors, the sort of the Joe Coles, the Rios. There's the list just goes on, doesn't it? Really, that of players that West Ham have actually developed over the years, and sadly for a lot of them have gone on to bigger and better things. Unfortunately, with the likes of the Rios and the Joes, the Michael Carricks, the Glenn Johnsons.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. And it must have been. I mean, obviously, when you made your league debut, and it must have been an incredible achievement. Being a West Ham fan, walking out and just at Upton Park with you to be honest, as a handful of people who are West Ham fans who can live that dream. And so I think that's why fans take to the academy boys going through, because it's almost like they're living their dream through you.
Well, it is, and to be honest, I was very, people talk about my league debut. In actual fact, I actually made my debut in midweek in the week in the great Bernabeu Stadium in the Cup Winners' Cup. I came as a sub against Real Castilla, and it's ironic actually because you start your career at the Bernabeu. I mean, the only way is down, really, isn't it? I think it would be fair to say that was a reflection of perhaps how my career panned out. I mean, but for me, making that debut on the Saturday against Watford was it was very much something that did fulfil a dream, and to actually to score on my debut as well was just incredible. And it's funny actually, because when you look, and I talk about my generation. I mean, TC did exactly the same thing. TC made his debut and scored against Spurs. I remember that one. I mean, Alan Dickens also made his debut and scored. I remember away at Notts County actually. But for me, it was very much a special memory and remains so now. I mean, I speak to West Ham fans now, and I think if every West Ham supporter I've spoken to who claims to have been at that game against Watford in 1980 actually was there, I think there must have been about 50,000 people there, and I don't think there were.
They were. I didn't, Bobby. I'll be honest, 'cause I wasn't actually born. I do. I was 41, so I missed out. Unfortunately, I would have been there probably otherwise. And obviously, that sort of period that he was playing for the club for the first team was a really. I mean, there was a load of good characters in there. What was it like being a sort of? I suppose with you, and there was a group of you, so to speak, who were of similar ages, but going in and people like Reg, and there was loads of massive characters coming through that team when you was in there. What was it like being in that dressing room with all those players?
I mean, to be honest, it was the beauty of that particular dressing room was the fact that in those days, in the Premier League, Division 1, or whatever you want to call it, there was much more continuity of squads.
Yes.
You came back every year and the same people would be there. So clubs tended to keep squads together for sort of a lot longer period. I mean, even when the team got relegated, and people thought that we'd lose people like Trevor, for example, and not only did they stayed and came back and won the league, won the cup. If you remember, and if you think there was that continuity, and for me, growing up, having looked at people like the great Trevor Brookin, Billy Bonds, people like that, they were people that I'd idolised,
of course,
from afar, and to actually be in the same dressing room and to be on the same pitch as people like that was wonderful. And I think that the beauty of it as well, it was a very close knit group.
Yeah.
We all still speak to each other regularly now. I mean, the boys of '86 thing is obviously a bond, but the reality is that people like the Phil Parkses, the Alan Devonshires, we're all still in regular contact. TC, Alan Dickens. Obviously, I can't get away from Paul. But it's very much a case that there was that camaraderie between the group, that we grew up together, we trained together. You shared success, you shared defeat together. But it was very much a case that it was a family club, and it was a family club that was led from the top by John Lyle, who was very much the father figure for all of us, in the sense that he was so much respected with his staff. People like Mick McGivern, who I still see regularly, Ronnie Boyce, the late Ernie Gregory. There was continuity there, and and that, I think, formed a really important part of what this club is all about.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And as you said, the continuity, you had sort of, I think it was 5 players from the 1980 end up going to the 85-86 squad. And, that, and when we interviewed Tony Gay, he was saying every year that he was there was a testimonial year, it was for a different player, which is incredible nowadays. You think about it, it's a rarity now. As you said, players move around. There's a lot more fluidity in terms of, so that's why you don't get that sort of same camaraderie, same team spirit that you had back in the day, so to speak, because you have players there. There's a real sense of continuity there, and I think that's probably a little bit why nowadays players, some players, fans don't take to as quickly, because they're only there for a couple of seasons, and then they bugger off a little bit. That's the way nature of football at the moment. Same as managers as well.
I think what you find, though, to be honest, Russ, as well, is that you do get players. I mean, Billy. I mean, people forget that Billy Bonds wasn't a homegrown player.
No.
Billy was actually an ex-Charlton player. But I mean, try telling a West Ham fan that. As far as any West Ham fan would ever tell you, Billy is West Ham. And even someone like Galley. I mean, Galley wasn't homegrown, but Galley came in, and immediately it was as if he'd been there forever.
Yeah.
He had that type of personality. He's very outgoing, very much the joker of the pack in the dressing room, and he fitted straight in with the West London posse, as it were, because we had the little group who came across from the west, people like Dev and Paul Goddard and Parksy, and that lot used to come across from west of the city, if you like, whereas the majority of the squad were sort of, you'd probably say Essex based.
Yeah, and I get that. Yeah, but it was just this melting pot which just worked, didn't it? It just worked,
Yeah.
It just, and as you said, it's a period of time which a lot of fans, look back and with great pride, because you said it's probably the last time we won anything really in terms of 1980, apart from the Intertoto Cup in '99. We forget that. But like 85, 86, we still talk so humbly about that. And when I think I was interviewing Tony Cottee, and he said there was something like 17 home records or 17 club records that team still possesses. Absolutely mental, absolutely crazy. Right. What we do, Bobby, is us. Obviously, you mentioned loads of amazing players. What we like to do with the fans and players is to do Hammers 11. That's the whole idea of the channel, really. But the idea is to go through and put together a team of people from your perspective, people maybe that you played with at West Ham. Now, obviously, not saying one's better than the other, but the idea is it's just to get a feel of the people you enjoy playing with, because obviously 50 odd appearances. There's a lot of players in that team. We try and keep it to a 4-4-2 as well, just because I'm not particularly good at video editing, to be honest. This isn't my day job.
I know I'm going to have to be very careful here, because I know I'm going to upset a lot of people.
Of course you are.
For the record, apologies to everybody in advance.
You can always do honourable mentions. That's how I think that's how Bish got away with it. Honourable mentions for but I'm going to pick so that's how he did it. So I could probably guess a lot of these, to be honest, Bobby, based on the period you played and the players you played with. So in terms of in goal.
Well, to be honest, that's a very easy one.
So I mean, I'll start you off easy there, Bobby.
That's a very easy one. But having said that, what I would say is that the only person who might well dispute this one will be the late, great Ernie Gregory, who, according to Ernie, was the best goalkeeper that ever lived. But Ernie was a wonderful character. He really was. He was Mr. West Ham, and he, the tales that he used to tell everybody sort of his time at the club, and how, had it not been for the war, that he'd have been the best goalkeeper ever. But Ernie was a great character, and I didn't get the opportunity to see him live, but I hear that he was a great goalkeeper. But for me, you can't really get anywhere away from Phil. I mean, Phil Parkes, for me, Phil is not just as a footballer, but as a person. Phil Parkes is a wonderful person, a great guy. I can't speak highly of anyone more than I could of Phil Parkes, because he was someone as a youngster coming in. When I came in, he was the world record signing at the time, 565,000, huge amount of money back in the day for a goalkeeper. But he more than justified that, because he was immense. If ever there was a goalkeeper that controlled his penalty box, it was Phil. He used to actually say to everybody, and he must have been so reassuring to the defenders, because he used to just say, if it's in the 6-yard box, it's mine. So you better get out of your way, because I'm coming, and I'm coming through whatever. And part of the training regime that was devised for him by Ernie Gregory was that when crossing practice used to take place for Phil, all the youngsters, all the apprentices will be lined up as cannon fodder in the 6-yard box. And basically you'd just be there as obstacles and human skittles, really, for Phil. And basically balls would be lofted into the box, and you did your best to just get out of the way of big Phil as he came. But for a big fella, he was remarkably agile as well. Fancied himself as an outfield player in training games. I'm not too sure about that, but for me, I think Phil was just very unfortunately born in a generation that, with people like the Shiltons, the Clemences, the Joe Corrigans, and undoubtedly, I think he'd have amassed many England caps had he not been in such a steam company. But yeah, for me, no question at all, Phil Parkes. Lovely man.
Yeah, lovely guy. All right, we'll put Phil in. Let's go left back then, Bobby. Who do we have left back?
There have been so many good left backs over a period of time. It's really, that's a very difficult one. I never played with Dixie. I played against Dixie many times, and he kicked me many times for various teams when I played against him. And without doubt, I think he encapsulated one of the things that when you put West Ham fans into categories, they love the silky skills of the Trevors, the Devs, and the Paulos, but at the same time, they really appreciate someone like a Billy Bonds or a Julian Dix, or who's going to be very up and at them. I think. Without doubt, we had several sort of very good left backs at the time. Frank, and obviously Frank Senior played there for a lot, and you can't ignore the amount of appearances he made for West Ham. Played either side as well. Frank, to be fair, it's Frank. I think was a very underrated player actually.
Definitely.
I know he played. I think he got a couple of caps. But I think he was a far better player in his prime than people gave him credit for. Dixie, I think, was very much one that you'd look at within the 90s, which was probably post myself, if you like. But I think it's a difficult one. But I think in his prime, I think I'd probably go for. I'd probably go for Frank.
Yeah. I mean, you're right, and I think he has, and what's come through of this, I think not he's become lost in it, but I think he's been underappreciated. When you look back and talk to all the people who were around during that, experienced fans, I call them, Frank comes through really, really, really fondly, and I don't think he's, considering how many games he played for the club, he doesn't seem to be ever in that same bracket. Do you know what I mean? As Billy.
People forget though, Russ. People forget that he played in the teams with the great Bobby Moore. And,
exactly.
The generation. If you look at the generations of teams that Frank played in, and made a wonderful contribution, won 2 FA Cups. I think if you look at his success, I don't think you can ignore Frank.
No, not at all. Not at all. Totally get that. All right, put Frank in. Let's go the other side then, Bobby. Who's going to be right back?
I think that's similarly, that's a difficult one actually, and many people you could mention in dispatches. But for me, probably one of West Ham's best ever signings was Ray Stewart.
Yeah, Tonka.
I think Tonka came to us as a 19-year-old from Dundee United. First season played and won in an FA Cup final, won a League Cup. Well, played in a League Cup final, I should say. Hundreds of games. Very rarely missed one of the 60 or 70 penalties that I think he successfully converted for us. And a great character, Ray, as well. Very much a winner, a fighter. I think again that Ray is another of those that was perhaps underrated in terms of what he contributed and what he gave to the club. He was a fierce competitor, and another one, a better footballer I think he was given credit for. So I think I'd go with Tonka.
Yeah, I think you would. Although you wouldn't understand what you were saying anyway, bless him. But yeah,
he's good. I'm scared to not.
He's a great guy. Yeah. He actually phoned me, bless him. He phoned him to say he wasn't ignoring me, but he didn't do Zoom. In his Scottish accent, and but he still.
You'd have definitely needed subtitles anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I said we'll do it when we get back to London Stadium. Don't worry. All right, we'll put Tonka in. Let's go centre half. So who's your first centre half then, Bobby?
First one I think is Billy.
Yeah.
I think I was fortunate enough through most of my time at West Ham to play with two great centre halves, and as I've said before, and I've said, for me, Billy epitomised everything that West Ham was all about. The warrior, the sort of competitor, the captain who would get his hand around your throat if you weren't doing it. He dragged people along in games and demanded of everybody. I sometimes think you look for leaders in clubs when things are going badly, and I think Billy epitomised that leader, respected by everybody, fans, players, everybody, and I think he was very much the leader. I think the best description I could give of the leadership qualities and the relationship with Billy is that we played in a charity game a few years ago with regard to the boys of '86, and we were playing in a friendly game at Chelmsford, and I'm strolling along in my usual manner, and there was this roar from Billy, "Digger, get yourself back in there." And it was like in a time warp. It was like I suddenly morphed back into the 17, 18-year-old kid in the dressing room and did as I was told and went back. And it was just second nature. If Billy said to do it, you did it. Yeah. And so, I think Billy was very much the leader. And, I think his leadership skills, his battling qualities, his desire to win, certainly for me made him a perfect centre half and captain. If I'm making my captain, I've also made him captain of mine. Of my all-time 11 at the same time.
Yeah, no, I agree. Unsurprisingly, Tony Gale made himself captain. Not surprised for Reg. And Reg was on corners, free kicks, penalties, and he was first team coach and assistant coach as well. But that's Reggie.
Probably the biggest compliment I can pay to Gurley actually is the fact that when he came in,
Yeah.
to be fair, Billy was coming to the end of his career and Gurley came in. And what I would say is that although he was a different type of player, if you like, but he made very much a seamless transition and fitted into that West Ham team along with Alvin straight away. You know, and the biggest compliment I could pay to Gurley is the fact that it's a very hard act to follow is a Billy Bond, and yet he did that in his own way, and he did that very well. And he was very much Gurley was very much a leader as well in his own way. You know, he was very much someone who brought the dressing room together with his nasty slide digs and things. But that's Gurley.
Yes. That's been picked up on by several ex-players. Just took it basically.
But that's dressing room banter. You know,
exactly.
Gurley was very much. He was the king. He was the king of that dressing room in that sense. You know, you had to be very on your toes in terms of what you wore, and how you sort of turned up for training, because he'd soon have your legs away from you. But also, you know, for someone with so little pace, he read the game so well. You know, was a top player, and so whilst I am mentioning Gurley in honourable dispatches, I'm afraid that he doesn't quite make that centre half spot, and I think, simply for the reason that I don't think you can go look beyond Alvin Martin.
No, I agree. I agree. He was an incredible player.
Alvin for me was, you know, probably of a different generation, in one of the first ball playing centre halves, really. You know, and you know, read the game so well, was fantastic on the ball, was a real foil to the more ball attacking centre halves, if you like. He was the foil to those. Very good with his feet. I'm sure he's told you. I'm sure someone else will tell you about the hat trick he scored at Newcastle as well. So, you know, so it's you know, but yeah, for me, Alvin epitomises, and he's another one that epitomises everything that is good about West Ham. I mean, for me, it's just been fantastic to see as well the next generation now with his boy David. You know, we've all seen David grow up as a young lad and do the hard yards, and you know, for me, it was a really fantastic achievement for David to get himself to be part of the club, and fully deserved in terms of the part he played last year. And it was so rewarding as well just to see him sharing that with his dad, who is a real West Ham legend. So you know, I was at Chelsea at the game when we won at Chelsea, and David played very well. And I remember afterwards when he ran across to go and greet his dad after the game, and it was it was a wonderful moment, and something that sort of probably Alvin deserved far more, and probably appreciated far more than anything he did on the pitch. I can't think of anything better as a West Ham legend as Alvin is than to see your boy on there as well performing heroics. So that was a magnificent day, I'm sure, for the Martin family, but certainly Alvin was responsible for a lot of great days for West Ham, because I think he really was an outstanding player. People forget that he was he went to Mexico, I believe, in the '86 World Cup, which is a measure of how highly he was rated, and yet had that loyalty that wanted to stay with the club as well.
Incredible. You're right. And you know, there's a few people out there who I'd say, you know, adopted Cockneys, and Alvin's an adopted, you know, he still lives around the area. You know, his grandson goes to my daughter's school. You know, so you know, we're in Hornchurch, you know, so it's, you know, seeing where he came, his journey to get to West Ham from sort of Merseyside coming down, it sort of adds extra credence to that story, as you're saying, in terms of being a West Ham.
I think we can take him as homegrown because he did his apprenticeship. He left Everton. He did his apprenticeship at West Ham. He came through the youth team. So, you know, Alvin definitely, to my mind, is a homegrown Hammer, no question.
No, definitely. Right, we'll put that. Okay, that's the back four and the goalkeeper. Let's go into midfield then, Bobby. Let's go left midfield.
Alan Devonshire.
It's just like, done. $5,000 from what's name. Absolutely incredible.
That's the easy one. I've got to say that had it not been for the skills of an Alan Devonshire, I might have played more games. But you can't ever grudge the fact that he was absolutely outstanding. Came in from non-league. I think it was Southall he came in for. But truly, for me, one of the most naturally gifted players that West Ham have ever had. The way he used to glide with the ball. What a lot of people forget is not just the stuff that he created and the things that the goals that he made, the chances that he made, but the defenders will tell you that when we were under the cosh, and it happened quite a lot at West Ham, you are under the cosh quite a lot, but just Dev getting the ball and just travelling up to the other end of the pitch with it, sort of just running with it and keeping going. And I've relieved the pressure at times when he had the ball, and he always aware, playing balls in, going into support balls. For me, it was just tragic that the injury he had. I remember the injury he had at Wigan, and ironically, that injury opened the door for me to play probably more games that particular season. But with all due respect, that there was only one Alan Devonshire, and I really think that he certainly is one who goes in the all-time. Not just players that I play, but he's definitely one that's in there in the all-time Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I agree totally, and as you said, I mean, even in your day now, in your sort of role now, Bobby, $5,000 for that player,
Wow.
what would he be worth in today's money? Do you know what I mean? It's absolutely.
You wouldn't like to think quite.
No.
I mean, you look at the prices that we've paid for some players in the current team, and you think, is Dev as good as those? I think you'd say yes, he is.
Yeah. All right, but let's go the other side. Let's go right midfield then, Bobby.
That's a difficult one because there were so many players who played down that right hand side. I mean, Paul Allen played out there for a while on the right hand side, very successfully actually. Before Paul obviously went off to Spurs, I think that was probably Paul's best season actually when he played on the right hand side. Paul played there very successfully. Mark Ward came in and did a fantastic job in that Boys of '86 team in particular. Mark came in and really made a difference. Not just the power of his shooting. I mean, for what you'd describe as a pint-sized winger, if you like, he certainly didn't lack in aggression and desire. And I think Mark would definitely be someone who made that role his own. I mean, his long-range shooting, his crossing. I think Mark certainly would certainly be considered by most West Ham fans, looked at very fondly in that position. So I think if I'm looking through my time there, and obviously I played myself down that side for a while, but I would have to say that without doubt, Mark Ward I think gets my vote.
Sure. Yeah.
This is getting perilously close to a Boys of '86 team if I'm not careful. So I'm trying to be objective.
Yeah, well, I think when I interviewed Waldy, he basically just read out the '86 team except for Julian. Because I'd put Julian in because we would have won the league if we had Julian in that team. You reckon? But all right, we'll put Waldy in. Again, another sort of adopted Cockney. Really, he's still very much revered by the West Ham lot. And right, okay, let's go into midfield then, Bobby. Let's go to centre midfield. Who's your first centre midfield player?
The first one, number 10, I think is probably the easiest one of the lot.
Yeah.
But in terms of memorable mentions for number 10s, I don't think you can not talk about Paolo.
No.
I think Paolo came to the club and one of Harry's signings, and I think it would be fair to say that nobody knew what we were going to get.
No.
But I think as a West Ham fan, I certainly look at Paolo and I think that he was a real joy to watch. I never had the privilege of playing with Paolo, but as a West Ham fan, someone I totally enjoyed watching. I think the flair, the histrionics, the tantrums, but the end product. I mean, you look at some of the goals he's got. I mean, there's the famous volley when he's launched in midair, sort of, that gets shown on every Clips special.
Yeah,
Paolo was a wonderful player, but even as great a player as Paolo was, I think for me, and I think for all West Ham fans, I think there's only one number 10. I think there's only one to 10, and that's Trev. Sir Trev. For me, I was fortunate enough to play games with Trev, and at that time when I came into the side, Trev was probably in the twilight of his career, but he was still by far, such a class act. He really was a wonderful player, and the joy of Trevor, the balance, the strength. I mean, Trevor had the lot. You know, his balance was so good that he used to play in rubber soles on muddy pitches, and never lose his balance. And for me, he really had everything. On my league debut, people talk about me scoring on my league debut, but Trev scored the winner. That particular day. I think he's someone who could have gone and played anywhere and showed great loyalty to the club. People. I mean, there was rumours at the time that the great Brian Clough wanted to sign him going back a few years ago. He stayed when the club got relegated. He stayed. He was a regular international playing in the World Cups, and he stayed. And he saw success through generations, didn't he?
Good point.
The 60s through 70s. He played with the greats, with the Moros. He came through the generations, and integral part of the team that came back. Not only the team that came back to the old Division 1, but of course scored that famous header in the FA Cup final. But you could carry on talking superlatives about Trev. I can remember actually sitting at Wembley. We were at a dinner at one of the cup finals at Wembley, and we were sitting on a table with Claudio Ranieri and his assistant. And I remember at the time, all they wanted to talk to Trevor about was, do you remember the famous goal that he scored for England in Hungary when the ball stuck in the stanchion? I think that was a mark of the fact of sort of how widely he was respected. And
of course,
for me, as I said, you could talk about Trevor all day, but for me, certainly in the category, I will put him alongside the Bobby Moores, the Billy Bonds. I think Sir Trevor Brooking is without doubt one of the greatest icons of this club.
No, I agree. He's part of that Mount Rushmore, isn't he, of West Ham players, definitely.
Absolutely.
And
a great guy as well.
Yeah.
And a great guy as well. And he is not half as sit on the fence that people would have you believe when you talk to him privately. Trevor has strong opinions, but he's always been too diplomatic to air them publicly.
No, I get that. And one thing I don't appreciate about your era, Bobby, is how boggy the pitches were. Do you know what I mean? It's only watching all these old games again that I realise the state of these pitches. And there's people like yourself and Trevor doing all this incredible skill, and Dev on bogs. Again, what would you guys be like at the bowling green at London Stadium? It's been incredible.
Funnily enough, I was talking to Frank McAvenny about that last week, because we were talking about the Chelsea game. I don't know if you remember in '86 when TC got 2 and Frank got 1, and we were talking about the pitch then. And you look at that pitch at Stamford Bridge there, and it was an absolute quagmire, wasn't it? Yeah. And yet, sort of as you say, the boys, the way they played, and the performances on pitches like that. As you say, you do think that with the benefit of modern sports science and better pitches and better nutrition and training, people often ask about different eras, and yes, the game is faster now, but I genuinely think that had you put a Trevor Brooking or a Billy Bonds or a McAvenny or someone like that into this generation, I think that'd have been equally effective, and that'd have been more protected.
Yeah. I think it was Waldy said if you put the '86 team up against the current West Ham squad, he reckon they'd have done about 4-0. He reckons 4-5-0.
I'm going to be diplomatic and say that it's very difficult to judge.
It's very difficult to judge. It is, and we can't judge them. It's a generational thing, but yeah. Okay, all right. Very diplomatic there, Bobby. Okay, let's go for that last piece of the midfield pie. Who's your last midfielder?
Very difficult actually, that one, because it's usually an unsung role, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the role that sort of people fill really so that the likes of the Devs and the Trevors can thrive. So it probably doesn't get the
glamour, does it? No, I know what you mean.
That it's actually due. But people forget how good a player Alan Kirbishley was when he first came into the side as well. I think everybody expected an awful lot from Curbs, and there was an awful lot of pressure on him when he first came in. Another local boy who, fantastic ability, probably a little bit like myself, didn't really fulfil the potential that he had at West Ham. Curbs went on to have a fantastic career, not only as a player but also as a manager as well. But Curbs is someone I would certainly mention. I would certainly mention Neil Orr, who another adopted Scot who came down and you know, was an integral part of the jigsaw. Really, did all the dirty stuff. You know, did all the stuff and got the ball and got it for others. And you know, he played a key role as well in that particular role. For me, I think if we're looking, I don't think you'd go further than Jeff Pike.
Yeah.
For me, Jeff Pike gets that final spot for me because in terms of the players that I was fortunate enough to play with, Jeff was very much one of those as well that was an unsung hero.
True.
Did the dirty work, covered a lot of ground, was a much better one-touch footballer than he was ever given credit for. Jeff, you know, he really was. You know, he was very much give and go. You know, linked play sort of. You know, so I think he's someone who never really got the credit that he got that he deserved, but was an integral part of, as I said, giving the freedom to those more flair players, if you like, to go on and create, and you know, created a fair few things himself as well, Jeff. So you know, I think he's another one of those unsung heroes who perhaps doesn't get the credit that he's due. So yeah, I think I will be inclined to think, well, Jeff makes my team.
And again, one of those few who did both. He did the 80 and the 85-86. You know, I think it's 5.
Absolutely.
And again, he doesn't necessarily got the credit that he deserved. I totally get that. And he says that himself.
Yeah,
I'm sure he did, didn't Pikey? Right, okay, let's go up front then. Strikers, first striker then, Bobby.
That is probably the hardest of the lot.
Yeah,
and there are so many great of my generation. There are so many to talk about that I'm going to upset far more here than I'm not going to upset. I think if I were to talk about those under consideration, David Cross. David Cross was one of my absolute heroes because an intelligent guy, David. To see him on the pitch, you wouldn't believe the character, the intelligent, well-spoken, erudite character he is off the field. I learned so much from David Cross, not just in the football sense, but as a person.
Sure.
Wonderful striker for West Ham. Never forget the season when we came up and he scored 4 at White Hart Lane when we beat Spurs. You know, he regularly scored sort of, you know, double figures, 20 goals in the time that he was at West Ham. Very much led the line, willing runner. Very much someone who was able to handle the physical side of it. You know, he was. You know, for me, David Cross is definitely one that you can't fail to mention in dispatches. Stuart Pearson.
Yes.
I mean, Stuart Pearson came to us at the back end of a wonderful career, and he was someone who was one of my heroes. Stuart, you know, he was part of that wonderful Manchester United team of the early 70s when you had people like Gordon Hill and Steve Coppell crossing balls, you know, for him and Joe Jordan, you know, and then when he actually turned up at our training ground and sort of, and you thought, wow, I'm going to play with Stuart Pearson. For me, he was an absolute legend, and probably one of the highlights of my career is the fact that I shared a room with Stuart Pearson, and because he really was a legend and such a clever footballer as well. He was one of those players who could link play, drop back, play in the hole. I mean, in the cup final, if you remember, you know, tactical genius from John Lyall, the way that the position that Stuart played in the cup final against Arsenal, where he played in that more withdrawn left side role, you know, and absolutely perplexed Arsenal.
Couldn't figure it out. No.
They just couldn't figure out what to do with him. So he was someone who had a real talent. I think he was a wonderful player as well. There again, I think though, that going back to my boys of 86-team, I think if you look at the two boys who played up front, apologies to all other strikers, but if you're talking about, you know, and of course you can't ever have a conversation about West Ham strikers without mentioning Sir Geoff Hurst. You know, you can't. How can you leave Sir Geoff Hurst out of any West Ham team? You know, because he, you know, what he achieved, you know, not just for West Ham, but obviously for his country as well. You know, for me, Geoff Hurst is one of the greatest West Ham strikers of all time. I'm going to try and cheat on this one because I'm going to name four, and I'm not going to. I'm going to try not to break them down.
Don't worry.
TC,
Yeah.
you can't get away from TC just because of his goal scoring record. I mean, TC was from day one.
Yeah.
I mean, when he made his debut against Spurs, I remember sitting in that. We all knew he was going to score. Quite honestly, it wasn't a case of is Tony going to score.
Yeah.
Tony scored goals. You know, in the youth team, in the reserve teams, Tony was such a driven, single-minded goal scorer. I never forget, even in his autobiography, he has a pop at me for not passing to him in a reserve game where sort of he might have scored another one. You know, but Tony was a great clinical finisher. You know, that's what Tony did, and I mean, his record speaks for itself, doesn't it? You know, in terms of and not just he went off to Everton and scored goals as well. You know, played for his country. You know, TC a proper West Ham fan. Tony sort of went to school around the training ground, and you speak to his mum. His mum's a West Ham fan, and it's just everything. Tony is very much, epitomises West Ham.
Yes.
A great friend, a great guy. And for me, I've got to pick Tony because if I didn't, he'd never talk to me again.
Get the ump, wouldn't he? He'd get the ump. Yeah. So, he loves a stat, does Tony? Yeah, he likes to keep his stats up. So
you can't get past Tony. His record, I think his record is second to none. So without doubt, Tony Cottee, he's in that four that I'm actually putting forward.
Okay.
Number four actually came to us as a midfield player, and it was only through injuries that he was actually pushed up front. And when he was pushed up front, you look at what he did, and I'm talking about Frank McAvenny. Great guy, Frank. Speak to him regularly. In fact, I spoke to him last week.
He's great.
You can't help but smile when you hear when I see Frank's number come up on my phone, and I pick up the phone, and I just have a little smile on my face because I love Frank. He's just the ultimate teenager, Frank. Frank's in a time warp. He's still 16, Frank. And
I love him.
He had that joy about him, the way that he played. And people looked at Frank and they said, "Yeah, he's a party animal. He's this, he's that." But no one ever trained harder. No one ever worked harder on a football pitch, and no one had more of a desire to win and to score goals and and. In that particular season, him and TC were electric. Yeah, that they were as good as anything. And when I talk about TC, I mean TC was very much a box player. Tony, that's where he came to life. Frank wanted to be part of the party. Frank wanted to play, and Frank could use up a lot of energy going here, there, everywhere. But he could score goals, and he was a clever player. Frank, far better player than people gave him credit for, and. I do genuinely think as well that he was very unfortunate because his peak time, if you like, when he scored the goals for us was unfortunately during a time when we didn't have a TV deal and we had a TV blackout. So a lot of the goals that Frank
scored, good point.
Weren't seen by the wider public. And I remember once in an effort to change that. Funnily enough, I've just got to tell you now, my phone's just rung and it's Paul Allen. So I shall speak to Paul when we finish this call.
Don't worry, I'll be emailing him later anyway. Don't worry about that.
but no, Frank McAvenny. I remember his appearance on Wogan, and he was one of these guys, Frank. That never mind that he played hard, he worked hard. Everything he did, loved Frank. He loved life, still loves life. Yeah, and I think he is a true West Ham adopted legend as well. I think probably the funniest story about Frank is that when he did his autobiography, he decided to do it at Stringfellows. He decided to do the launch at Stringfellows, so he persuaded a few of us to come along. And I'm thinking, I really don't want to be seen in Stringfellows on a whatever night it was. And so we went along to the launch, and at that particular time. Frank hadn't told us, but it was the book launch was being televised by Soccer AM, and I thought to myself, I am not going to be seen in Stringfellows at a book launch or anything on any night of the week. And I remember after they'd done the filming, I remember ringing up the producers of Soccer AM and saying, "Could you cut me out of could you cut me out of that, please? I don't want to be in that particular segment." But
no.
but no, Frank's a great guy. He's another one I speak to regularly, and he's one of those who fully deserves to be part of that esteemed selection of great strikers at West Ham.
Yeah.
So I say those are the four that I'll talk about. There are many more that you could talk about.
Of course, there's hundreds.
And I'm not even going to try and split them, to be honest.
No, I get that. Don't worry. But man, it's been brilliant. I know you're a busy man, and I'm taking you away from your calls from Paul Allen and everything. It's been lovely chatting to you. Genuinely, really, really enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much for your time, Bobby. And obviously, everyone watching at home will appreciate that as well. Lots of great memories. And from me and Bobby, thanks for watching. Share, like, subscribe. You know what to do. Keep the messages coming in. I read everyone, really humbled by all the support for the channel. And for me and Bobby, take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you very, very soon. See you guys.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Russ.
Cheers.